An iron ore royalty windfall behind the state government's revised surplus of $3.7 billion. Tales of dramatic rescues in far north Queensland as floodwaters begin to recede. An international operation in the Red Sea as Houthi rebels upend global trade. And could John from Albany be Australia's best landlord? Good evening, Pamela Medlen with ABC News. WA's new Treasurer, Rita Safiotti, has shown off a healthy set of books, delivering her first budget update with a forecast surplus that's grown to $3.7 billion. But the surplus wasn't as eye-watering as many predicted, with the opposition accusing the government of hiding its riches and welfare groups pushing for greater spending to help people through the cost of living crisis.
Arriving with a set of figures that would be extraordinary anywhere else, but have become business as usual in WA.
Our operating surplus is up from $3.3 billion at the time of the state budget to $3.7 billion.
Total revenue grew by $2.2 billion, courtesy of taxes and higher royalties, with demand for iron ore still strong. But at the same time, income from lithium dropped by 80% or $550 million on predictions. Even still, some were expecting surplus records to be broken. But the Treasurer points to $2.2 billion in debt paid off and expenses rising by $1.8 billion, with cost increases on projects, including another $700 million blowout on Metronet. $2.8 billion provisioned for the new public sector wages policy, and Water Corp also retaining $2.8 billion in dividends to support building a new desalination plant in Elkamos.
So we've got a new Premier, a new Treasurer, but the same old process of hiding the massive surpluses going forward.
Having a strong operating surplus means that you can fund infrastructure that services future generations without burdening future generations with unsustainable debt levels.
When we have people in Western Australia who can't put food on the table, can't secure their accommodation, can't pay their car registration, can't fill prescriptions, it's not the time to be saving for future generations.
WA's peak welfare organisation says the number of families in need is up more than 50% on the previous year.
We live in an extremely wealthy state that's outstripping all the other states, and the majority of West Australians really are doing well. But there is an increasing growing number of those who are falling below the poverty line.
We're continuing to do what we can to support households.
Rita Safiotti points to power bill credits, free and reduced public transport fares, and efforts to bring on new housing supply, and says strong economic growth, which is predicted to be higher at 4.5%, is vital to ensuring Western Australians have good jobs. James Carmody, ABC News.
An emergency bushfire warning has been issued for parts of the Manjimup Shire in the southwest. The fire, which is near the town of Northcliffe, started late today near the intersection of Tapnam Road in Meerup, with authorities warning the fire has rapidly escalated and is a threat to lives and homes. The bushfire is moving fast in a northwesterly direction. As the rain threat eases in far north Queensland, some communities remain cut off by floodwaters, with essentials running low. There's also been dramatic rescues, with people plucked from trees on the roof of a pub by locals. And late today, the Defence Force evacuated an entire town.
As the floodwater recedes, stories of survival and bravery are emerging. In Rossville, north of Cairns,
James, are you all right?
rumours of people trapped in trees and on the roof of a pub reached Gavin Deere.
Yeah, we got you. We got you.
This man found exhausted and shivering, but alive.
Okay, we got you, mate. Can you get down?
Yeah, it's all right, all cramped up.
Yeah.
Just when we were starting the motor, we could hear help, help. And we got out and we rescued the first fella sitting right up in a tree. This is an ocean of water, like unbelievable stuff.
This tiny two-seater mustering chopper did what the Defence Force apparently couldn't, plucking people from the roof of a pub.
we're used to cyclones, floods every year, but this flood, mate, it was something to behold.
This is the Sodden Group save from the Lion's Den hotel, that is.
These are the stories of which every Australian can be proud of, the very essence of the Australian character.
Army Chinooks were finally able to fly into the Indigenous community of Wujal Wujal, north of Cairns.
There he is.
To evacuate some of the town's 300 residents. They've had a traumatic week, some forced to swim through croc waters in the middle of the night. By the end of the evacuation, stricken locals will have been moved to the safety of Cooktown.
Healthcare, food, showers at the PCYCs.
The Northern Beaches suburbs of Cairns were smashed at the height of the emergency.
Yorkie's Knob, 2023.
The road in has crumbled, warped and buckled by the water. But the Yorkie's Knob Boating Club has power and some food.
It's really a blessing. Yeah, I'm happy that the community is looking out for each other.
It's also being used as a makeshift medical clinic.
We're doing the best that we can here. It's quite limited.
Nearby, the Ezzy family has a heartbreaking task, clearing mud from their home.
It was in every cupboard, behind every door and every shelf, everything.
They've lost almost everything, even the Christmas tree.
I think it'll hit me in a few days, but it's all stuff. We're all okay.
In the tropical heat, exhausted locals have begun pulling their trashed belongings out onto the street. It's not known exactly how many homes were damaged or destroyed in this flooding event, but what is certain is it's going to take a huge effort to recover. The rain may have eased, but for many, the flood has put life's essentials beyond reach. Christy Sexton McGrath, ABC News, Yorkie's Knob.
The Israel-Gaza war is threatening to hit global supply chains. A spate of attacks on tankers and ships moving through the Red Sea by rebels linked to Iran has prompted the United States to form a maritime coalition in response. 10 nations have already joined, but Australia has so far resisted calls to deploy a warship.
A crisis mission to Israel where military tensions are playing out well beyond Gaza.
These attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law.
The US Defence Secretary's cobbling together a maritime coalition to protect merchant ships, now under regular attack by Houthi rebels when transiting the Red Sea.
This is not just a US issue. This is an international problem, and it deserves an international response.
An initial 10-member naval task group, including military assets from Britain, France, Bahrain and Italy, will take part in Operation Prosperity Guardian to patrol the crucial trading waters. Australia's yet to declare any contribution.
We'll consider the request that we've received from the United States military in the normal course.
What we have in this indecision is an international embarrassment.
The Red Sea is the artery that leads to the heart of global trade, the Suez Canal. Up to 15% of the world's trade moves through this bottleneck and around 9 million barrels of oil every day. The spate of attacks from Iran-aligned Houthi rebels has forced some of the world's biggest shipping companies to reroute, adding significant extra time to journeys and cost. Oil prices are now rising as a result.
Our ships are not properly configured to deal with the threat, and we don't have enough to even do the work we need to do in our own region.
Defence Chief General Angus Campbell will tonight join an international virtual meeting hosted by the US Defence Secretary to discuss the growing Red Sea crisis. For days, Australia's signalled its reluctance to deploy a warship to the Middle East, but the government could soon offer other military support. Andrew Green, ABC News, Canberra.
As the international community prepares a response to those attacks in the Red Sea, there are growing calls for a ceasefire inside Gaza. Israeli families of hostages are also putting pressure on their government, pleading for more to be done to bring their loved ones home.
"73 days of fierce fighting and bloodshed, killing an estimated 19,000 Palestinians, according to Gazan health authorities. It's a soaring toll that's prompted Israel's most powerful ally to once again urge restraint around civilians.
America's commitment to Israel is unwavering, and no individual, group, or state should test our resolve. We must get more humanitarian assistance into the nearly 2 million displaced people in Gaza, and we must distribute that aid better.
When we spoke, I expressed again our commitment, Israel's commitment to achieve total victory against Hamas.
The UN Security Council delayed a vote on a new proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza, and the US stopped short on calling for it today. But international pressure is growing. America is pushing for a restart to the hostage and prisoner exchange. Hamas says that won't happen unless the bullets and bombing stop. Fury within Israel is growing too. Families of hostages protesting in Tel Aviv, calling for more to be done to bring their loved ones home, after Hamas posted another video of 3 elderly men seized on October 7.
It was a joy for a moment to see them alive.
As by far the largest supplier of weapons to Israel's military, the US risks complicity in atrocities in Gaza, according to Human Rights Watch, and now finds itself in the awkward position of trying to urge restraint. And even if the US does allow a new ceasefire resolution to pass the UN Security Council, there are still no guarantees Washington's influence can rein in a vengeful Israel. Tom Joyner, ABC News.
The evidence in former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann's defamation hearing has wrapped up, with a lip reader brought in from the UK for the case. Mr Lehrmann is suing Network 10 and journalist Lisa Wilkinson over an interview during which Brittany Higgins alleged she'd been raped at Parliament House.
The case has ended where it began, at the Dock in Canberra, the pub where Brittany Higgins and Bruce Lehrmann were drinking before the alleged rape. Lip reader Timothy Reedy came all the way from England to tell the court he believes in one exchange Mr Lehrmann was plying Ms Higgins with drinks, saying, "Drink that all now," to which she replied, "I don't want to." Mr Lehrmann's lawyer challenged the testimony, suggesting Mr Reedy was influenced by the context, but Justice Michael Lee has allowed the evidence to be part of the case. Mr Lehrmann launched the defamation case after his trial was abandoned last year with no findings against him. Earlier today, and for part of yesterday, the court live stream was suspended, while Senator Linda Reynolds' former Chief of Staff, Fiona Brown, gave evidence. Ms Brown told the court she was blindsided when Brittany Higgins told her she'd woken to find Bruce Lehrmann on top of her. But she stuck by her claim Ms Higgins never disclosed the assault, something Lisa Wilkinson's lawyer, Sue Chrysanthou, questioned. "You must have understood that it must have been an allegation of assault. I didn't, because I was reliant on the information she gave me, and she did not make an allegation." Fiona Brown said after she was told by police Ms Higgins had lodged a complaint about a sexual assault, she spoke to Mr Lehrmann on the phone about his termination. She said he told her neither Brittany or I were in an intoxicated state. She said she pressed further, asking, "What state was Brittany in when you left?" He said she was happy. One person not in court today was Brittany Higgins. She and her fiancé, David Shiraz, have left the country to build a new life in France. The hearing will take a pause tomorrow before final submissions later in the week. Elizabeth Byrne, ABC News, Sydney.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the experts concerned as the road toll increases for the first time in decades.
The numbers are going up instead of down.
The horrific limb fractures, the ruptured livers, the shattered bones, we've got to do a lot better than we are.
You're lucky to see them for 5 lessons and a test, or even as little as 3 lessons before they go for their driving test.
Also, I'll speak to British politician and former president of the UN Climate Conference, Alok Sharma.
After weeks of warnings, a volcanic eruption is underway tonight in southwest Iceland near the capital Reykjavik. Authorities had been bracing for the eruption after thousands of small earthquakes, preemptively evacuating more than 3,000 residents in a nearby town.
A sea of fire spewing from cracks in the ice.
The eruption beginning just after 10 p.m. local time after a series of small earthquakes in southwest Iceland. Jets of lava burst more than 100 metres into the air along a fissure about 3.5 kilometres long. An Icelandic Coast Guard helicopter braving blackened skies to capture these extraordinary scenes and confirm the exact location and size of the event. The eruption is taking place just 3 kilometres north of Grindavik, a small city on Iceland's southern peninsula. The town's 3,000 people were evacuated last month due to heightened seismic activity, with thousands of quakes detected over the past 8 weeks.
The big question is how intense will it be and how long will it last, and that is something nobody knows.
Iceland is home to 33 active volcanoes. This peninsula alone has seen 3 eruptions over the past 2 years. There are concerns the fissure could pose a risk to a nearby geothermal plant. A series of volcanic events across Iceland in 2010 caused widespread flight disruption across Europe, but experts don't believe this eruption will do the same. It's unlikely to produce a huge ash cloud. There have been no reports of injuries or deaths, with authorities warning the public not to approach the area. A spectacular sight, best seen from a distance. Nathan Stitt, ABC News.
An earthquake has killed more than 100 people in a mountainous region of northwestern China. The US Geological Survey put the quake's magnitude at 5.9. At least 300 people were injured, according to the country's state media. It also reported damage to water and electricity, as well as transport and communication infrastructure. Pope Francis has formally approved the blessing of same-sex couples by Roman Catholic priests in a bid to make the church more inclusive. The Vatican says blessings will be permitted, albeit with a number of caveats. They can be offered as long as they're not tied to any specific Catholic celebration or religious service. The ruling goes on to reaffirm that marriage is a lifelong union between a man and a woman. A dress worn by Princess Diana has sold for $1.6 million at a Hollywood auction, 11 times over the estimated price. It's the most expensive sale ever of clothing owned by the late princess, topping the iconic wool sheep print jumper sold earlier this year. Diana was photographed twice wearing the black and blue ballerina length dress. The Northern Territory's Chief Minister, Natasha Fyles, has resigned from the top job over revelation she failed to disclose around 750 shares in a company that owns a controversial mine on Groot Island in the remote NT. She's previously dismissed that community's calls to investigate the mine's health impacts, saying there's enough monitoring in place. In a media conference today, she announced she'll step aside as leader and from her portfolios, including Health Minister, but will stay on as local member. Deputy Chief Minister Nicole Manison has put her hand up to lead Labor to next year's NT election. Ms Fyles has faced mounting accusations of conflicts of interest in recent months, but she says her failure to disclose the shares wasn't intentional.
I made a mistake. There is no excuse for that. I'm owning up to it. I accept the consequences of it. That's the right thing to do. So on Thursday, I will officially resign my commission as Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, as well as my other ministerial portfolios.
A baby boy has become the first child in Australia to be born from a transplanted uterus. His birth gives new hope for women who haven't been able to carry their own babies.
A bundle of joy and a beaming mum. Henry Bryant arrived via caesarean section at Sydney's Royal Hospital for Women on Friday morning, weighing in at a healthy 2.99 kilograms.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. There was barely a dry eye in the room. It was really exciting.
Unbelievable because this was no ordinary birth. Incredibly, baby Henry spent 9 months growing inside the same uterus that carried his mother, Kirsty. The 30-year-old had received a donated uterus from her own mother, Michelle, in January as part of a groundbreaking clinical trial.
I'm just so grateful that I found the trial and that I was accepted and I've been able to go on this journey and bring another baby into the world.
She shared the journey of the complex 16-hour operation on social media.
Being in a regional town like this, Kirsty's a little bit of a superstar now.
3 months after the surgery, she had IVF and was lucky enough to become pregnant on her first transfer. Friends in the family's hometown of Coffs Harbour can't wait to meet the new arrival.
Hopefully they'll be home for Christmas, and we will put our name down on the visitors list and wait for approval.
Until the transplant, Ms Bryant was unable to carry another child because she needed an emergency hysterectomy after suffering a life-threatening hemorrhage during the birth of her daughter Violet. The doctors behind Henry's birth say they've been contacted by dozens of other women hoping to also receive a uterine transplant.
That's a combination of women who were born without a uterus. They might have lost their uterus due to a cancer, or they might have a malfunctioning uterus.
2 more women have already received transplants at the hospital, and there are plans for 3 more surgeries. And there's already another baby on the way, with one of the recipients currently 16 weeks pregnant. Sarah Gerrithy, ABC News, Sydney.
For more than 2 decades, a West Australian man has had one of the best residential rental deals in the country. His secret? Striking up a valued friendship with a benevolent landlord and cutting the real estate agent out of the equation.
There you go, John. This is one of the happiest landlord-tenant relationships in the country, forged on a friendship.
Happy days.
Carl has been renting this Albany house from John for more than 20 years. For most of that time, the rent has been $180 a week.
It's good to do the right things, or try and help people out. You get a good feeling inside. I do anyway, about helping people. Is that the chimney not moving?
No, the chimney's not moving, I don't think. The 90-year-old shares the role of maintaining the house with his tenant.
Anything wants fixing in the house, well, one way or another we get it done. If we can't do it, well, I've got to get somebody else.
As a disability pensioner, Carl would be facing homelessness without John's support.
I'm very, very limited. It'll virtually be either moving back home with me folks or being in a car. There's no other option.
My luck has turned to be good luck during life, and I can afford probably a little bit to help other people now. And why shouldn't we help each other?
Sharing the luck and feeling good about it. Tim Wong-See, ABC News, Albany.
To finance now, the Australian share market has lifted as the RBA today revealed why it held back raising interest rates this month. Here's David Chow.
The Reserve Bank has revealed that it was seriously considering another interest rate hike earlier this month. But its decision to keep rates on hold at a 12-year high was ultimately a balancing act. The RBA's latest minutes show that the board had considered that underlying inflation was higher in Australia compared to other countries, and there was a risk of inflation taking longer than expected to fall to its target of around 3% by 2025. But the bank decided not to ruin Christmas this time due to the possibility of a larger than expected rise in unemployment down the track. And the fact inflation is falling pretty quickly in other countries anyway. Markets are now betting the RBA is done with its rate hikes, a complete 180 from a month ago. They're also pricing in 2 rate cuts next year as the economy slows down. But there are many economists who reckon that time frame for cutting rates is a bit far-fetched. Meanwhile, the All Ords went up by a solid 0.9% to its highest level in 10 months, and shares of a small lithium miner called Azure Minerals jumped 1.7% after Australia's richest person, Gina Rinehart, teamed up with a Chilean mining company, SQM, to make a $1.7 billion takeover bid for Azure. Overseas, it was a solid day for US, UK and Japanese stocks, while oil prices jumped after BP became the latest company to announce it'll pause its shipments through the Suez Canal due to attacks by militants in Yemen on vessels in the Red Sea. And finally, the Aussie dollar is sitting above 67 US cents. And that's finance.
England Test batter Zach Crawley admits it came as a surprise to the lineup for Perth Scorchers in this summer's Big Bash League. Having previously been unsure if he'd be free from international commitments to play in the tournament, Crawley was picked up by the Scorchers in the BBL draft. He's set to make his debut for Perth at home tomorrow against his former side, the Hobart Hurricanes.
I can't wait to be on the Perth side. I was playing here for Hobart last year and hit 4 second ball or something, and no one clapped. So hopefully there's a few more claps this time if I hit 4, so that'll be good.
The Western Bulldogs have snared 3 of the best 6 players in the AFLW draft in a move they hope will propel them back up the ladder. Last night, the struggling club picked local teenager Christy Lee Weston Turner with their #1 selection.
The most exciting young footballers in the country couldn't wipe the smile from their faces. Some are embracing their newfound celebrity status.
I've never gotten more messages than what I got last night, so I felt really popular. Superstar.
The Western Bulldogs select Christy Lee Weston Turner.
Growing up in Melbourne's West, Christy Lee Weston Turner was a mad Bulldogs fan.
There was a lot of tears yesterday and throughout the night, and even this morning.
The 17-year-old will have to juggle the start of her football career with the final year of school.
Footy is definitely my priority, but I think everyone needs just a switch-off moment, and I've got school and I know I've got work as well to cover me.
The Bulldogs dominated the pointy end of the draft, recruiting 3 of the top 6 picks, including Tasmanian midfielder Brooke Barwick.
Since I was a little girl and realised I wanted to play AFLW, I had to consider the fact that I had to move away, and I feel content with that.
Prospective players had the option of nominating nationally or just for their home state. Victorian Jess Wrench says she had no hesitation with the idea of moving to Perth.
I see it as an opportunity, and why wouldn't you want to fully open yourself up to the opportunity that you're given? So I'm 3 hours away from Melbourne anyway, so I was like, I've got to move anyway.
Melbourne brought in a father-daughter pick, selecting Gemma Rigoni, whose dad, Guy Rigoni, played more than 100 games for the Demons. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne.
And now to the weather with Herlyn Corner. It was a really windy morning, Herlyn.
Yeah, it was a night of strong easterlies last night, with gusts of up to 80 kilometres an hour in Perth this morning. It's set to stay that way the next few days, so not great for fire weather, unfortunately. Temperatures in the city peaked at about 1:30 this afternoon with 32.2 degrees from a low of 16.2 degrees around 10 to 5 this morning. Air and salmon gums in the south dropped to minimums of 9 degrees, while most towns in the north are still sweltering through a heat wave. Broome had an uncomfortable low of 27 degrees. The hottest spot, though, was Halls Creek, where it hit a top of 46 degrees today. Argyle got close, recording 45.5, and Newman had 44. On satellite, while we only saw some low-level cloud in the south today, you can see much of the east coast had lots more to report, with thick cloud due to a low that's brought widespread rain, thunderstorms, dangerous winds and even hail. At home, a ridge is developing in the south with a trough extending over inland parts of the Gascoyne and into northern parts of Perth, so thunderstorms will continue for those regions tomorrow. Nationally, it'll be a wet day for most of the capitals. On the east coast as expected, a top of 31 for Brisbane, 22 in Sydney, partly cloudy in Melbourne, 20. Showers for Hobart, mostly sunny in Adelaide, and Darwin will get showers and a possible storm, 34 degrees. Back to WA's north, another very hot day ahead with showers and storms over the Kimberley and interior, reaching 47 for Fitzroy Crossing, a much cooler 28 though for Carnarvon. There's a chance of dry thunderstorms over the northeast Gascoyne, interior and far north Goldfields. The central west will be hot as well, several towns in the 40s and windy, cooler for some towns like Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie in the 20s. There's a chance of showers and thunderstorms for the Goldfields, Great Southern and South Interior. Windy along the south coast. Albany will be a cooler 24 degrees. There's an extreme fire danger warning along with a total fire ban tomorrow for the Midwest, Gascoyne, Perth, Metro, Goldfields, Midlands and Southwest regions, and a strong wind warning for several coasts from Geraldton down to Esperance. For Perth, it'll be another windy morning with strong gusts, slight chance of a thunderstorm for northern suburbs, and it's set to reach a warmer 35 degrees after a low of 21 overnight. Winds on the local waters will be easterly up to 20 knots. The sun will rise at 7 minutes past 5 and set at 7:20 21. And looking ahead, temperatures will peak on Thursday with a hot top of 37 before it bounces around in the low to high 30s in the lead up to Christmas. The forecast has changed slightly, 35 on Christmas Day at this stage, Pamela.
Keep an eye on that. Thanks, Herlyn. That's ABC News for now. We'll be back with you tomorrow. In the meantime, you can stay up to date with ABC News online. Stay with us for 7:30.